April 1939, an important month in comic book history. Things were really looking up for the comics industry at this time. All-American Comics was the latest new publisher to enter the race with 2 #1 issues this month and would later merge with DC Comics. There was a record 26 titles on the newsstands this month, the highest so far in comic book history. And sales were likely up across the board as even the CGC census starts showing more and more copies and hits a record high so far this month in comic book history. All-American Comics Ashcan, no number, dated April 1939. This is a black and white cover with full color interior. This was an Ashcan comic put together to secure the trademark of the title and logo. And the Ashcan consisted of a new cover using the image from Adventure Comics number 33 over a remaindered copy of Detective Comics number 23. The cover featured art by Craig Flessel and was reprinted from Adventure Comics number 33, but this time in black and white. Since the interior contents were Detective Comics number 23 from January 1939, we find a lot of the popular strips from that issue are found here again, such as Speed Saunders in a 6-page story written by Gardner Fox with art by Fred Guardineer. Larry Steele is 6 pages written and drawn by Will Eli. Crimson Avenger appears in 6 pages, drawn by Jim Chambers in this early superhero strip. Spy is 8 pages from the team of Siegel and Schuster, featuring the villain Dr. LaForge. Dr. Fu Manchu is a 2-page story written by Sax Rohmer with art by Leo O'Mealia. This adventure strip features an adaptation from The Insidious Dr. Fu Manchu by Sax Rohmer. Cops and Robbers is a short cartoon written and drawn by Bob Kane. And Slam Bradley is a lengthy 13-page strip written by Jerry Siegel with art from the Schuster shop in this early detective mystery / sci-fi strip, which features the first appearance of Professor Kenton. And in this story, Slam and Shorty go to the year 2 billion AD. All the stories in this issue are reprinted from Detective Comics number 23 because the interior pages actually are Detective Comics number 23. All-American Comics number 1, April 1939 from DC Comics, or originally called All-American Comics. This book began the All-American line of comics, which would eventually merge with DC and bring us such great superheroes as The Flash, Green Lantern, and Wonder Woman. Compared to its sister company, this is the equivalent of New Fun number 1. There is a Larson Pedigree copy of this book. All-American Publications is one of 3 American comic book companies that merged to form the modern-day DC Comics, one of the world's 2 largest comic book publishers today. Superheroes created for All-American included the original Atom, The Flash, Green Lantern, Hawkman, and Wonder Woman. Max Gaines, future founder of EC Comics, formed All-American Publications in 1938 after successfully seeking funding from Harry Donenfeld, CEO of both National Allied Publications and sister company Detective Comics. With M.C. Gaines as editor, assisted by Sheldon Mayer, All-American Publications launched its flagship series All-American Comics with an April 1939 premiere. Like many of the comics of the time, All-American debuted with a mix of newspaper comic strips reprinted in color and a smattering of original comic strip-like features. Among the strips were hits such as Bud and Jeff, Skippy, and Toonerville Folks. New content included Scribbly by Sheldon Mayer. All-American Comics would run 102 issues up to 1948. The cover features Scribbly, Mud and Jeff, Ben Webster, Regular Fellas, Skippy, and Toonerville Folks, drawn by Sheldon Mayer. Hop Harrigan is a 4-page story written and drawn by John Blummer under the alias John L.B., and this aviation strip features the first appearance of Hop Harrigan and Tank Tinker and Prop Wash. Scribbly is featured in 4 pages from writer-artist Sheldon Mayer. And this is continued from Dell's The Funnies, number 29, that was out last month. And Adventures in the Unknown is a 6-page strip written by Carl Claudy with art by Stan Ashmeyer. This is an early science fiction comic book strip featuring Ted Dolliver, Alan Kane, and Professor Lutyens. And this comes from a book adaptation. All-American Champs is a 1-page story drawn by Walter Galley. It's a biographical sports feature featuring baseball, basketball, and football stars. Jimmy Stone is a 2-page text story written by Loring Doust with art by Sheldon Mayer featuring the first appearances of Jimmy Stone and Mr. Hackett. And there is a one-page promo ad for Movie Comics #1, which was also out this month from this new publisher. Movie Comics #1, published by All American Comics, or later DC Comics, dated April 1939. This short-lived series featured a unique concept of having stories told with painted movie stills, which in the premiere issue included Son of Frankenstein, Gunga Din, The Great Man Votes, and others. Harry Lampert featured interior art, as well as cartoonist Ed Whelan's popular Minute Movies comics. The first issue adapts 5 films. At this time, the company was located at 480 Lexington Avenue in New York. MC Gaines was the managing editor, with C. Albert as the editor, and Sheldon Mayer as the assistant editor. There is a Carson City pedigree copy of this book and a Denver pedigree copy. Gunga Din is featured on the cover. Airbrush corrections by Jack Adler. Son of Frankenstein is an 8-page strip written by Willie Cooper from his screenplay, with art by Jack Adler and Emery Gondor. In this early horror suspense strip, which features Boris Karloff as the monster, Bela Lugosi as Igor, Basil Rathbone as Wolf von Frankenstein. A large feature comic, series #1, was a popular new series debuting this month from Dell Comics, cover dated April 1939. The first issue features Dick Tracy. The on-sale date of this book was February 1939. For 10 cents, it was 76 pages, black and white comic, 8.5 by 11 and a third dimensions, oversized. Newsprint covers and heavy rough stock on the first 9 issues of this series. Dick Tracy Meets the Blank is featured on the cover, drawn by Chester Gould. And there's 71 pages worth of Dick Tracy strips in Dick Tracy Meets the Blank, written and drawn by Chester Gould. And this is reprinted from Dick Tracy newspapers from October to December 1937. Star Ranger Funnies, Volume 2, Number 2, April 1939, published by Centaur Publications. The cover features Indians reading a book in the rain. Tex Maverick Horns In is a 7-page Western Frontier strip, originally printed in Western Picture Stories number 2 from 1937. Star Comics, Volume 2, Number 3, April 1939, published by Centaur Publications. The cover art is by Gil Fox, featuring skydiving and parachutes. This issue also features Tarp Mills art. Trail of the Mammoth is a 6-page story drawn by Gil Fox and originally printed in Star Comics number 7 in 1937. Funny Pages, Volume 3, Number 3, April 1939, published by Centaur Publications. The on-sale date was February 24th, 1939. The cover features a baseball game with dynamite. The Arrow is a 6-page early superhero story written and drawn by Paul Gustafson and would later be reprinted in The Arrow number 1 in 1940. Skid Davis is a 4-page story written and drawn by Al McWilliams in this aviation adventure strip. Amazing Mystery Funnies, Volume 2, Number 4, April 1939, published by Centaur Publications. The artists involved in this issue include numerous that would work for Timely Comics later in the year, including Bill Everett, Carl Burgos, and Tarp Mills. The cover feature is Sandhog, tunnel building characters, possibly drawn by Paul Gustafson. There's a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this book. Air Sub DX is a 4-page story with art by Carl Burgos. Bombs of Destiny is a 5-page strip written by Will Harr with art by Fred Guardineer. And Dan Hastings is a 4-page strip also drawn by Fred Guardineer. Skyrocket Steel appears in a 4-page story drawn by Bill Everett in this early science fiction strip, which features Paul Marston, who is a spy for the Red Men of Venus. And Daredevil Barry Finn is a 4-page story drawn by Tarp Mills. Keen Detective Funnies, Volume 2, Number 4, April 1939, published by Centaur Publications. The on-sale date was February 23, 1939. Gabby Flynn is featured on the cover. Rustlers from Sawtooth is a 7-page strip written and drawn by Craig Fox and originally printed in Funny Picture Stories, Volume 2, Number 1 in 1937. Single Series Number 5, April 1939, published by United Features. The focus of this issue is Fritzy Ritz, an American comic strip created in 1922 by Larry Whittington, with Ernie Bushmiller taking it over in 1925. In 1938, the daily strip evolved into the popular Nancy strip. The Sunday edition of the strip began by Bushmiller in 1929, continued until 1968. Jumbo Comics number 7, April 1939, published by Fiction House. Gerber rates this issue a 10 on the scarcity rating, and 10 is a unique, considered to be less than 5 known copies in existence. Truly a scarce book. It is oversized with a large dimensions of 10.5 by 14.5 inches. At this time, it was a bi-monthly book. The on-sale date was February 7th, 1939. There is a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. The first 8 issues were printed in black and white and oversized. At this time, at Fiction House, the editor was Malcolm Rees. Jerry Iger was the feature editor, and Will Eisner was the art director. Parts of this issue are reprinted from Wags UK from Editor's Press Service, 1937 and 38 issues, number 38, 46, 50, 72, 81, and 84. Sheena, Spencer Steele, and Peter Pup are featured on the cover, drawn by Will Eisner. Bobby is a 2-page strip written and drawn by Jerry Iger in this young child humor strip, reprinted from Wags UK. Hawks of the Seas is a 4-page story written and drawn by Will Eisner under his alias Willis Renzi in this historical strip, reprinted from Wags UK number 83. Uncle Otto is a short story written and drawn by Will Eisner under the alias Carl Heck. And this is taken from Universal Phoenix Features, dated July and August 1937. Katharine Hepburn has a hobby of collecting hats is the featured story in Stars on Parade, written by Tony Rosert under the alias Laura Lane, with art possibly by Bernard Bailey in this nonfiction strip which talks about Katharine Hepburn and other movie stars, and is taken from Universal Phoenix Features, dated April 19th, 1937. Peter Pup is the latest strip, 4 pages from writer-artist Bob Kane, and this is reprinted from Wags UK number 48. Heroes of Sport is a short strip drawn by Will Eisner under the alias Tom Swift, and this sports nonfiction strip features Catherine Rawls and other sports figures, taken from Universal Phoenix Features, September 6, 1937. The Count of Monte Cristo is a 4-page strip adapted from Alexandre Dumas, the original author, with art by Lou Fine under the alias of Jack Cortez, and this is reprinted from Wags UK number 88. Pee-wee is a short humor child story written and drawn by Jerry Iger, taken from Universal Phoenix Features. Gilda Gay is a short story drawn by Bernard Bailey and Ed Lowlin, and this features Gilda Gay and Monty, taken from the Universal Phoenix Features, dated July 19th, 1937. Sheena is a 4-page story drawn by Mort Meskin in this classic jungle strip, featuring Sheena, Bob, Sandy, and Kona, reprinted from Wags UK number 78. Jest Laughs is a short strip written and drawn by Bob Kane, taken from Universal Phoenix Features. Hunchback of Notre Dame is a 4-page strip adapted from Victor Hugo, the original author, with art by Dick Briefer, featuring the characters Quasimodo, Phoebus, Jehan, Clopin, and Esmeralda, taken from Wags UK number 44. ZX5, Spies in Action, is a 3-page story, possibly written and drawn by Will Eisner, but not confirmed. And this is reprinted from Wags UK number 71. Ken Hammond is a 2-page text story written by Lynn Davies, with art by Lou Fine in this jungle strip. Diary of Dr. Hayward is a 4-page story drawn by Lou Fine under the alias Kurt Davis in this adventure strip, reprinted from Wags UK number 88. And Wilton of the West is a 4-page strip drawn by Lou Fine, a Western Frontier strip taken from Universal Phoenix Features. Crackerjack Funnies, number 10, April 1939, published by Dell Comics. The contents include mostly strip reprints, such as Red Rider, Wash Tubs, and others. There is a Dell Comics file copy of this book. The on-sale date was February 24th, 1939. There's a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. Freckles is featured on the cover with art possibly by Merrill Blosser. And the child is stuck in a tuba on the way to the plumber on the cover. Red Rider makes his second appearance in comic books in a story written and drawn by Fred Harmon. Time marches back with Looney Luke is a 2-page story written and drawn by Ole. And this is a humor, early science fiction comic book strip featuring the character Looney Luke. It is new material and not reprints. Tom Mix is a 4-page story written and drawn by Jim Stevens in this Western Frontier strip, and it is new material, not reprints. Don Winslow of the Navy is 4 pages written by Lieutenant Commander Frank Martinek with art by Leon Baroth in this war adventure strip. Action Comics, number 11, April 1939, published by DC Comics. This comic features the 11th appearance ever of Superman, the 11th appearance of Clark Kent, and the 11th appearance of Zatanna. And this is just the 4th cover ever to show the name Superman on it. The on-sale date of this issue was March 2nd, 1939. There is a Billy Wright pedigree copy of this book and a Rockford pedigree copy. The cover art is by Fred Guardineer, featuring submarines and warships. The Superman strip in this issue is 13 pages, written by Jerry Siegel, with art possibly by Paul Cassidy, inks by Joe Shuster. This early superhero strip features Superman, Clark Kent, George Taylor, still unnamed, and the villains Meek and Bronson. An unscrupulous firm sells what they think to be worthless stock in black gold oil, then try to buy it all back when they hear that oil has been discovered on the property thanks to Superman. Superman uses his X-ray vision in this story, and this is the first reference of Superman as the Man of Steel, as he is officially billed this at the end of the strip. Scoop Scanlon, 5-star reporter, is a 6-page story drawn by Will Eli, printed in red, black, and white. Pep Morgan is 6 pages from writer Gardner Fox with art by Fred Guardineer under the alias Gene Baxter. Tex Thompson is 10 pages, possibly written by Ken Fitch, with art by Bernard Bailey in this adventure strip. And Zaytara makes the 11th appearance from writer Gardner Fox with art by Fred Guardineer in a lengthy 12-page strip. Super Comics number 11, April 1939, published by Dell Comics. Dick Tracy, Little Orphan Annie, Terry and the Pirate, Smiling Jack are some of the highlights of this issue, which was on sale March 8th, 1939. The cover art is by Bill Holman. There's a Dick Tracy 4-page strip written and drawn by Chester Gould, featuring the characters Dick Tracy, Pat Padden, Chief Brandon, and the villain Danny Sapina. And this was copyright 1937, the Chicago Tribune, New York News Syndicate. Comics on Parade, number 13, April 1939, published by United Features Syndicate. Little Abner gets a cover appearance on this book. Tarzan, Captain the Kids, Ella Cinders, Nancy, and others appear. There's a Mile High pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church Collection. Feature Funnies, number 19, April 1939, published by Quality Comics. Joe Palooka, Dixie Duggan, The Bungles, and others appear. Mickey Finn is featured on the cover with art by Lank Leonard. Captain Cook of Scotland Yard is a 4-page story written and drawn by William A. Smith in this detective mystery featuring the first appearance of the villain Bart Scruggs, and this is Eisner Eiger shop material. Archie O'Toole is a 2-page strip written and drawn by Will Eisner under the alias Bud Thomas. This child story features the first appearance of the villain Count Hacula and the first appearance of the villain Tessie. Archie is bitten by a jitterbug and turned into a jive turkey in this story, which comes from the Eisner Eiger shop. The Clock Strikes is a 5-page story written by George Brenner. It is an early superhero strip featuring the clock plus the first appearance of Danny Dowd, Pug Pratt, and the Crusher. And this is Eisner Eiger shop, possibly reprinted from Wags UK. Espionage, starring Black X, is a 4-page story written and drawn by Will Eisner under the alias Will Irwin in his spy story, which comes from the Eisner Eiger shop. And Lollapalooza is a 3-page strip written and drawn by Rube Goldberg, his humor strip reprinted from the Frank J. Markey Syndicate. Ace Comics, number 25, April 1939, published by David McKay Publications. The cover art is by Joe Musial. Blondie is the main feature of this issue, but there are many other strips. Detective Comics, number 26, April 1939, published by DC Comics. The cover art is by Fred Guardineer in his crime cover, which is reprinted from Radio Funnies' Ashcan, which was in black and white. This cover featuring microphones, policemen, and radios. There is a Mile High pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church Collection and a Billy Wright pedigree copy. Slam Bradley is a 13-page story written by Jerry Siegel with art from the Schuster shop in this detective mystery, which features the villain Pierre de Zorze. Steve Malone is a 6-page strip written by Gardner Fox, and this detective mystery features the first appearances of the villain Paula and August Van Dorn. Crimson Avengers is a 6-page story drawn by Jim Chambers in this early superhero strip, which features the first appearance of the villain Joe Savo. Disguise is a 2-page text story written by Gardner Fox under the alias Paul Dean. Larry Steele is 6 pages written and drawn by Will Eli in his detective mystery featuring the first appearance of the villain Hegan. And Dr. Fu Manchu is a 4-page story from writer Sax Romer with art by Leo Omialia. And that strip is reprinted and adapted from The Insidious Dr. Fu Manchu by Sax Rohmer. Cleo and Clancy is a short story written and drawn by Bob Kane. And there is a one-line announcement for Batman, which will be appearing in the next issue. This is the first mention of any sort of Batman in comic books. Spy is a 6-page story from Jerry Siegel with art by Joe Shuster. Their adventure strip features the first appearance of the villain, Professor James Barton. Speed Saunders is a 6-page story written by Gardner Fox with art by Fred Guardineer, featuring the first appearance of Pharaoh Fleming and Smith. The Funnies, number 30, April 1939, published by Dell Comics. This comic features the origin and the first comic book appearance of John Carter of Mars by writer Edgar Rice Burroughs. Gerber rates this book an 8 for rare. The on-sale date of this issue was March 14th, 1939. Bosco is featured on the cover with art possibly by Win Smith. The Ghost of Winter Ranch is a 4-page story about Gene Autry, the Western cowboy. Art is possibly by Al Lewin. Wonderland of Oz is a 3-page story based on the original story from L. Frank Baum and adapted by Walt Spouse, who also drew this. Copyright Riley and Lee, and it's an adaptation of The Patchwork Girl of Oz. Red Ryder makes an early comic book appearance in this text story, 3 pages, drawn by Fred Harmon. Bosco appears in a 4-page story written by Walker Harmon with art by Win Smith. The story is based loosely on the 1931 Bosco Shipwrecked animated cartoon. John Carter of Mars appears in the first appearance in comics in a 4-page strip adapted from an original story by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and it's adapted and written by John Coleman Burroughs with art by Jim Gary in this early science fiction comic strip, featuring the first appearance of John Carter and Tars Tarkas, adapted from Edgar Rice Burroughs' A Princess of Mars. John Carter of Mars is a fictional Virginian transported to Mars and the initial protagonist of Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom stories. His character is enduring, having appeared in various media since 1912, debuting in a magazine serial. Tex Ritter is a 6-page story based on the cowboy movie star with art possibly by Frank Frollo. This is adapted from the movie by Monogram. And Crime Busters is a 4-page strip drawn by Al McWilliams in a crime story copyright to Stephen Schlesinger. Tip Top Comics, number 36, April 1939, published by United Features Syndicate. Tarzan is featured on the cover. There's also Little Abner, Captain and the Kids, Ella Cinders, Jim Hardy, and other strips. There's a Davis Crippen D-copy pedigree copy of this book. And this book features a Harvey Kurtzman panel from a contest. It is his first published comic work. Harvey Kurtzman, born October 3rd, 1924, lived until February 21st, 1993. An American cartoonist and editor, his best-known work includes writing and editing the comic book Mad from 1952 to 56 and writing the Little Annie Fanny strips in Playboy magazine from 1962 until 1988. At 14, Kurtzman won a cartooning contest for which he received $1 and his cartoon published in Tip Top Comics 36. Future collaborator Jack Davis had won the same contest a few issues earlier. Adventure Comics number 37, April 1939, published by DC Comics. This cover was also used to produce Double Action number 2, the famous DC Ashcan comic. The on-sale date of this issue was March 10th, 1939. The cover art is by John Richard Flanagan in this jungle cover, which would be reprinted in Double Action Comics number 2 in 1940. Federal Men appear in a 4-page story written by Jerry Siegel with art from the Schuster Shop. Dale Daring is a 6-page strip written and drawn by Will Eli, and this is the last appearance of this strip. Gufo the Great is a 1-page story written and drawn by Russell Cole, and this is the last appearance of this humor strip. Rusty and His Pals is a 4-page strip written and drawn by Bob Kane, featuring the villain Ichabod Slade. Anchors Away is a 6-page story written and drawn by Fred Guardineer, featuring the villain El Diablo in this adventure strip. King Comics number 37, April 1939, published by David McKay Publications. Popeye is featured in this jungle cover, and there's a Lost Valley pedigree copy of this book. Many other strips appear in this issue. Popular Comics number 38, April 1939, published by Dell Comics. Tarzan is featured in this story from Edgar Rice Burroughs. Shark Egan, Mr. Wong, Toby are also featured on inserts on the cover. Gangbusters, Zane Grey's, Tex Thorne, Jack Randall, Tailspin Tommy, Ben-Hur, and other strips appear. There's a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. More Fun Comics number 42, April 1939, published by DC Comics. The cover art is by Craig Flessel featuring two-man sword fighting. Radio Squad is a 6-page story from the team of Siegel and Schuster in their detective mystery featuring the first appearance of Bobby Kane, who coincidentally is the same name as Bob Kane, the creator of Batman. Johnny Law is a 4-page story written and drawn by Will Eli in this detective mystery, and the villains are the Ape and his gang. Red Coat Patrol is a new 6-page story from writer-artist Craig Flessel under the alias Wade Hampton. The adventure strip features the villain and first appearance of Frenchie LaRue. Buccaneer is a 5-page story from writer-artist Bernard Bailey featuring the villain Captain Cloug. Mickey Mouse Magazine number 43, Volume 4 number 7. Published by Western Publishing, April 1939. The Goofy and Wilbur, the Grasshopper classic cover and feature story were adapted from the first Goofy solo cartoon movie. Timid Elmer begins in this issue, and this is the second issue in a row with the Volume 4 number 7 as its official number. The on-sale date of this issue is March 10th, 1939. Famous Funnies, number 57, April 1939, published by Eastern Color. This is still the longest-running comic book up to this time. There's a mile-high pedigree copy of this book from the Edgar Church collection. Big Chief Wahoo is featured on the cover, drawn by Victor Pazmino. Features the characters The Great Gusto and Pigtails. Buck Rogers appears in a 4-page story written by Phil Nolan with art by Rick Yeager under the alias Dick Calkins in this early classic science fiction strip. And Jerry Iger under the alias Bob Bliss gives us his 1-page humor child story, Queenie.